The first couple phrases that I want to visit with you about is being the best and doing your best. Whoops, was not good at spelling. Doing your best. So once again, thinking back to, kind of how you were raised and maybe some perceptions you got. What were you taught or what was modeled for you, whether it be at home or at school or wherever? What did you pick up on growing up as a kid about either being the best or doing your best? From your family, from school? What did those phrases, what did that look like? When you're playing baseball, Al, did your coach or anyone ever talk to you about being the best or doing your best?
No, not at all.
Not at all, okay?
Yeah.
So not very much minds. Okay? How about anyone else? Anyone talk to you or did you ever think about being the best? Anyone say anyone ever ask you when you brought your report card home, did you do your best or did you give it your best? Or? Yeah. But my mom grew up in an environment where, yes, effort was huge because you're either going to live in poverty the rest of your life or you're going to bust your tail in some career, school, some profession and make a better future for your kids and grandkids. So my mom went through college and did real well and got married, and my dad died unexpectedly. I have an older sister. So now my mom had to provide for a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And once again, my mom was just going to work hard to make a better future for us kids. And so what I picked up growing up as a kid was, first of all, but my mom, so my mom did always ask, she never asked us to be the best, but she always would ask us, did you do your very best? Didn't matter what grades we got, unless they were straight A's. She would look at the report card, and we would get rewarded. If she thought we did our best, we would get to pick a restaurant that we could go out to when report cards came out. And that was a pretty big deal for my sister and me. So, but I remember in junior high, those are tough years. My mom got remarried in between 7th and 8th grade, and that was a huge adjustment in our home, and I was very insecure. And in 7th grade, I grew up in Williston, North Dakota. In 7th grade, we figured out that depending on how good you do, for sure in math, that the first semester they kind of watch to see how good you are in math, and then the second semester you get in classes of different levels depending on how good you are in math. And I remember in the beginning of 8th grade, the second semester of 7th grade, I remember I answered incorrectly because I didn't want to be labeled a smart kid. Because the kids I hung out with, I didn't think were going to make it into the smart kid class. And I didn't want to be abandoned relationally. I was already going through a tough time at home. And so I remember I got B's and C's in junior high. And I remember my mom looking at me, and she probably figured I could have done better. But I just remember her asking me, well, at the end, did you do your best? And I lied to her. I said, yeah, Mom, this is the best. Boy, it's just hard in junior high. Math, I used to be able to get math, and I just can't get it anymore. And I lied to her because I intentionally was answering some questions wrong because I didn't want to get displaced relationally. So what I picked up growing up as a kid was also my mom knew what she was good at, and that's where she spent her time. One reason why I was a horrible swimmer is my mom hates swimming. She didn't grow up swimming, so she never gave us kids an opportunity to swim. She always just said, oh, you can drown. And so I grew up afraid of water, and a few times as a kid I would go to maybe a wading pool, but I literally had almost never swam in my life until 9th grade because my mom was afraid of water, and in her mind, you don't try things that you aren't good at. So that was maybe the downside to something that I learned kind of as a kid about doing your best. And my mom's a very competitive person. So kind of the whole attitude of being the best and striving to be the best, that was core to who my mom was. The downside, though, I would say, is my mom didn't try things that she knew she couldn't be good at. So what I want us to just talk a little bit about is there is some traps with trying to be the best. We do know that it can be a very positive thing. My daughter, we have a 21-year-old son, we have a 4th grade daughter who just turned 9. My son is not competitive at all. He was okay at sports, not great, but he was more there, just to enjoy the camaraderie and me, I'm trying to I'm trying to time how fast he runs Al to first base because I know he can run faster, and I'm trying to kind of motivate him. And he was, usually what happened with Nate, our son, is like at the end of the season is when he'd really get motivated to, hey, Dad, you want to play catch? I'm like, well, we need to do this like 3 weeks before the season starts so that you're kind of ahead of the curve. But for him, he would always wait till towards the end of the season, and all of a sudden he'd want to practice hard, But our daughter Brooke, so I was raising our daughter Brooke the same way I did my son Nate, who's not super competitive. All of a sudden last year, and Brooke is very strong in school, very strong. All of a sudden last year, 3rd grade, she came home and she goes, yeah, Dad, I'm just not good at my times tables. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, yeah, I'm not good. You know how they work on their 5s and then they go to the 9s, and I don't know how they do it now. But she's like, yeah, I'm just not good at my 7s. And I'm thinking, well, when she does her testing in math, she's like way, way, way up there. Well, what I discovered is the reason she said she wasn't good is because this was the first time there was someone in her class who was better than her. And so all of a sudden, I guess I'll give credit to God. It wasn't my idea, but all of a sudden I said, hey, Brooke, do you want me to print out some times tables and you could practice? Oh, I'd love to. So I'm going on the internet. You can print out these times tables. And I'm timing her at night. She would spend hours working on her times tables. A little bit after that, we went into the parent-teacher conference, and I asked her teacher, and he just kind of smiles. He said, well, I have a student in my class who is the best math student. Her teacher has been a teacher for 30 years. She had a boy in her class who he said was the best math student that he's ever had in 30 years. So all of a sudden, my dad brain went in. Because my daughter's competitive, I said, why don't you try and keep up with this boy? And she did. She scored off the charts at the end of the year because she was trying to beat this boy that's really, really good. But long story short, she's now in some gifted math, and I thank this boy and his family all the time because I'm like, for Brooke, that was a huge motivating factor. If you're a sports fan, if you remember back to the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, the NBA was really down on its luck, and those two guys, they competed in college against each other. They went into the NBA. It was the Celtics and the Lakers, and both of them, for years, they competed and didn't like each other, and all of a sudden, towards the end of their career, I think they did a TV commercial together, and all of a sudden they realized, holy cow, I would never have been the player that I ended up being if it wasn't for you pushing me, and we wanted to beat each other all those years. And now they've become friends because they're like, Magic Johnson says, without Larry Bird, I never would have been the player I was. Larry Bird says the same. We wanted to beat the Lakers. I wanted to be the best, So there is that competitive nature, if you will, wanting to be the best that's healthy. The downside to that is what I call the comparison trap. A lot of people in our society, we see this in school. Yeah, the kid that's the best baseball player when he's elementary age, all of a sudden goes to middle school, and maybe he's not quite the best. And then they go to high school. Now it's even bigger. Or someone who's really good in high school, and then they go to college, and all of a sudden they're like, holy cow, I'm not the best anymore. And so we can get discouraged. Sometimes as the world gets bigger, if our goal is to, quote, be the best, it can also lead us to not try things. Because we're like, well, if I can't be the best at that, I don't even think I'm going to give that a try. So it can actually limit, my opinion, it can actually limit our ability or our desire to try new things. It can actually get very discouraging. I think being the best it can be a trap. Any of you have any thoughts at that point about being the best? And do you see that? Or obviously there's some strengths with it. There can be some downside. Any thoughts on that?
There's probably some parallels to perfectionism.
Yeah. Yep, if you can't be the best, if you can't be perfect at that, then you know what? I think I'm just going to check out. And I don't know, we all know people. You know, Brian, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I know people that they just beat themselves over the head all the time. Now, just to be clear, I'm not, you know, some people maybe even in this discussion, they'd be like, oh, so you're telling me to shoot for average and just kind of get by? I'm like, no, that's not what I'm telling you. I'm just sharing with you that with any mindset, there can sometimes be some weakness that can come with it too. So let's go on then to doing your best. You know, once again, quick illustration. So my daughter's in a volleyball camp, and my daughter isn't, I'd say she's average athletic. She hasn't participated in many sports. She loves just playing out in the neighborhood, and she isn't much of a fan of like organized activities, you know. But she's in a volleyball camp. It's like 4 days with the West Fargo Cheyenne High School volleyball teams putting it on. And so that's Monday night. So this Monday night, on the way home, she said something about, yeah, Dad, I didn't do my best tonight. I'm like, oh, really? She goes, yeah, no, I didn't. I'm like, well, you know, why is that? You know, I don't know. I'm like, so what do you mean? Oh, I didn't run as hard as I could, and I didn't, you know, I was talking a little bit when the coaches were talking, and I'm like, all right. So then I actually talked to her about some things we're going to talk about today. And it was a very interesting conversation. But the thing that I guess I will share with you, I think there's something wonderful about wanting to do your best. I also think the downside can be, I will say it this way. The downside can be, can you do your best in everything in life at the same time? And you can't. And so you can also get discouraged. I mean, let's be honest. Some of you that have children, I mean, you could have taken the day off work today and gone and hung out with your kid. Would that make you a better mom or dad? Well, yeah, probably. But you're here at work. So if you only had one job in life to be a parent, you could be your very best parent you could ever be. If all you did was focus on one part of your job, I mean, I'm guessing all of you have different areas of your job, and you ever feel like, man, I'm not doing my best at anything at work, because you get pulled, and just when you're about ready to solve this problem, the phone rings and someone's got a fire over here, and you know, and so that can also be discouraging. I know I go through that sometimes. I feel like, man, I don't know if I'm doing my best at anything in life, you know, and that can get discouraging as well. So, because if you really think about it, the way to really do your best is only do one thing. You know, just say, I'm going to just focus on this part of my job, and that's I'm just going to keep the website up and running. And if anyone asks me to help with hardware, I'm going to say, nope, I can't do that. I'm just going to do this because I want to do my best at this. Well, obviously that's not how life works, right? You know, there are factors that are out of our control. Sometimes we have health issues. You know, it was very important for me to help my mom finish her life well, and my mom passed away a year ago. And I spent a lot of time in evenings away from my family. And I tried my best to let them know, you know what, Dad's going to be gone. I'm trying to help Grandma, and she had a lot of doctor's appointments and was in rehab and then in hospice. And you know what, yeah, I missed some of my kids' events. And for me, I also knew, honestly, I wasn't as good at my job as what I could have been had my mom not been sick. But for me, that was important. It was something I needed to give time and effort and energy to. Does that make some sense? So there's seasons of life, right? We can't beat ourselves up. You know what? Certainly, if any of you have small children, I mean, they just suck the energy and even the life out of you sometimes. And that's the way it is. I'm not saying you just give your job your leftovers, but what I'm saying is you can just beat yourself up over, oh man, I'm just tired at work. Well, yeah, you got up twice during the night. Anyone would be tired at work, you know. So what I've learned is there are seasons of life, and we have to pay attention. Life is complex. It's not just as simple. Maybe as a kid, when my mom used to say, did you do your best in school? Maybe, you know what, that was my main job, you know. At the same time, I think as you grow older, adulthood, of course, life is complex. And it's not as easy as, well, did you do your best at this? Did you do your best at this? So, what I want to share with you is another concept. Maybe it'll be helpful, maybe that it won't. But what I want to share with you is, I'm going to use this one. So rather than being the best or doing your best, I want to talk for a little bit about offering our best, or giving, emptying our best every day, okay? And maybe you think, well, John, isn't this kind of just wordsmithing, semantics? It might be, but what I'm trying to get at is the concepts. So for me, it's not so much about the wording. I do think there is a difference between being the best, doing your best, and offering your best. You know what? When my mom was sick, and I wasn't maybe doing my best at my job, I do sleep well because I do know I was offering what I had. I wasn't withdrawing from my company. I wasn't withdrawing from my family. I was offering the best that I had. That is what I had on that given day in that current season of my life. I was offering the best that I had. So what I want to do is you absolutely do not have to like the Bible, believe in the Bible. I do want to use an example out of the Bible. A man, if we did a man on the street interview, holy cow, I don't even know if 1 in 1,000 people have ever heard of this guy. But in the Bible, there's a man named Paul who wrote a book to the Philippians, and there's about 6 verses where he talks about a man named Epaphroditus. Most people have never heard of him. They don't even know that he ever existed. Many, people that maybe have a little more background, they maybe have heard of Paul. Paul ended up writing half of the New Testament and had a real life turnaround as an adult. I don't know what percentage of people have ever heard of Paul, but I'm guessing it's way more than people who've ever heard of Epaphroditus. But Paul writes 6 verses, about 148 words about a man named Epaphroditus. And Paul calls Epaphroditus a hero. And I believe the reason he calls him a hero is because Epaphroditus offered his best. He wasn't the best. There's no awards named after him. There's no books in the Bible that Epaphroditus wrote. He didn't make any life-changing discovery that we, in science that we now remember. There's no statues of Epaphroditus anywhere in the world. But what Paul writes about in those 6 verses, it's Philippians chapter 2. I'm not going to read it, just whatever. If you guys want to, go for it, obviously. But there are 4 decisions that Paul talks about that Epaphroditus made that I think are decisions that we have to make if we're going to truly offer our best to our families, to our companies, just offering our best each and every day. So that's what I want to walk through real quick. The first one that we read about is that Epaphroditus, he valued people. He really cared about people. Paul says that Epaphroditus, he was in Philippi, and Paul was in jail in Rome, chained to a guard because of his faith and because of his teaching about Jesus Christ. And Epaphroditus, the Philippian church, sent Epaphroditus to go visit Paul in jail and make sure he was okay. And it was a huge risk for him to go, very dangerous. And then while he was in Rome, he got very, very sick and almost died, Paul says. And Paul wrote this. He said, Epaphroditus, he longs for all of you, and he's writing to the church in Philippi. He says he longs for all of you and is distressed because you heard he was ill. So in a time of illness, his biggest concern was, I need to get back to my friends and my family to let them know I'm okay. Don't be worried about me. Incredibly servant-hearted thing to do, but that shows that even in a time of illness, he was more concerned about people than he was his own health. And so I think at the end of the day, guys, if we don't care about people, then we aren't going to offer our best. We can be the best without caring about people. Michael Jordan, who many people would say was the best basketball player ever. I don't know all of his life story, but I know he's had, there are times when he's definitely replaced some of the relationships in his life with other things. So you can be the best without caring about people. You can just be motivated. You can be competitive and say, I'm going to be the best. And you can actually use people to get to be the best, right? You can even do your best without caring about people. You can just, once again, you can be motivated for selfish reasons. Maybe you want to do your best because then you'll get a promotion. Maybe you'll make more money. Who knows? But I think at the end of the day, for you and I, if we are going to offer our best, we have to care about people. Does that make sense? So obviously my question for all of us is, how much do you care about your coworkers? Do people matter to you? Do you care about your customers? Because no one hires me to do customer service training. And probably the number one reason why is, for me, number one, if you don't love people, I can't teach you to be great in customer service. You either care about people or you don't, right? If you care about people, you're going to do your best to help your customers, right? You're going to offer your best to your customers because people really matter. You're going to try and solve that IT problem because people matter, If you're only going to offer your best, I think, if people really matter to you. And that's your coworkers, that's your boss, that's the people that report to you, that's your peers. I don't know. Does that make some sense? If people don't really matter to you, I'm convinced that you aren't going to offer your best. You may try and be the best. You may even hold yourself accountable for doing your best. But I don't know that you're really going to offer what you have every day if you don't care about people. So how much, the question is, how much do you truly care about people? And then the question is, what is it, not you, but what are some things that people value more than they do people? Yep. Possessions, money? Absolutely. That's a temptation for all of us, let's be honest. That's a huge temptation for us.
And how we equate money with success, probably?
Yep.
Maybe to ourselves.
Yep. So we're driven to success, and for us, that money and those possessions, that equates with success. No doubt. That's how our world tend to keep score. No doubt about it. There's got to be some reason why. You look at the houses in the 70s versus our houses that we have in Fargo-Moorhead. There's no comparison, right? The town I grew up in the 70s, I don't think there was a 3-car garage in town, I don't think. Maybe in the whole city of Williston, maybe one house. Now, you can't build a house without putting a 3-car, you can't sell it, almost, they say. So somehow, we went from this is kind of what an acceptable house is, and now we're at this. So we're obviously keeping score, right? Whatever. I live in a house with a 3-car garage. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that over these last 30 years, a lot of things have changed. 40 years, and who knows what's it going to be 30 years from now? So, yeah. What other ways do we? What other things do we perhaps value more than we do people? Any ideas?
Time.
Yeah. You ever see people as a distraction? I got to admit, I do sometimes. There's some days when I go home at work. In fact, I was telling one of my coworkers yesterday, I'm like, Not that I hope my neighbor isn't out, but I just want to get inside. I really don't want to chit chat for 5 minutes because I'm tired. I know my daughter's waiting for me. I know what we got on our schedule tonight. And then you kind of feel almost like guilty about that because you're like, oh man, my neighbor's a nice guy, so it's not even that. It's just, it's time, right? You feel like you're trying to cram all this stuff in. And, absolutely. I think for some people, some of their own either personal comfort, maybe I'd call it politics. Politics not in Democrat, Republican. I'm just talking about, I just want to kind of live in my little box. I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't want to, hey, that's not my problem. And, hey, that was their decision. Why should I go talk to that family member? They're the ones that did this. And so I, call it what you want, but I'm just, I'm not going to go say I'm sorry because they were 90% of the problem, and so we're just willing to live with it. And let's be honest, that's politics, call it what you want, or that's kind of, there's something that we value more than making that relationship right, even if we were only 10% of the problem, or, So I think, if we were to think about it, there are a lot of temptations. So maybe if nothing else, maybe today, maybe our brains will go a little bit on asking even all of us individually, how much do I really care about people? Do I really value people? Is that felt and you know what? It's not some policy that Bill Marcial writes in an employee handbook. I truly believe change starts with all of us. I think anyone in a company can institute change first by showing up to work with that attitude that you want changed. People say, we just don't value people at our job, in our work environment. I'm like, well, do you? Do you model that? Do you show your coworkers how much a customer matters, or peers, or your boss? Well, but my boss is crabby. It's hard to work for. Okay, that's not fun. I've had that. I've had that before. But does that mean you don't care about them? You don't thank them for something they do well, instead of the 10 things that tick you off, So anyway, he valued people. I already talked about it, but he took a huge risk. I don't know that we're going to offer our best if we aren't willing to take a risk, because there's risks, right? Well, what if I don't get recognized? Man, what if I offer my best and now my company wants even more of they give me a new responsibility and I don't get paid anymore. Now I got more work to do. Yeah, there's a risk with that, of course. If I offer my family the best, are they always going to expect that? So there's always risks, I think, with offering our best. Epaphroditus took a huge risk, risked his life in order to offer his best to Paul. My question, and we won't dive into it together, but what holds you back from being more of a risk taker? My story is I was working as an electrical engineer. My boss called me into his office, asked me if I would be a department manager, company of about 200 people, Ultag engineers. I was working in Minneapolis. If we weren't the most successful department in the company as far as revenue and number of employees, I'd say we were either one or two for sure. We had a lot of repeat customers, large utility companies such as Xcel Energy, and they would call us and say, hey, we need you to design this substation. It'd be a $200,000 sort of a consultant fee to do it, and we didn't even have to put a proposal in. We did good work, and my job description would have been basically, John, don't screw up a good thing. It's running well. Thought about it over the weekend. I went in and I declined that opportunity. I said, you know what? In many ways, it's something I would enjoy more than what I'm doing. But I said, I know that I can't offer my best to this job. And my boss, he had gotten a promotion. That's why he was vacating his position and offered that one to me. And he kind of looked at me and I said, I just know that there's something else I'm supposed to offer this world. And he kind of looks at me and is kind of quiet. And he said, does it have something to do with ministry? I said, yeah, it does actually. And so a year later, I quit my job, moved to Fargo, started a new church with 3 people in our living room. God's blessed it, helped us. We've seen folks from all sorts of life backgrounds get strength and help. Church is growing to quite large in attendance, 15 full-time staff members. But my wife and I, we made a decision prior to this choice that we were going to try our best to live a life with no regrets. We wanted to live a life with no regrets. We didn't want to look back someday and say, man, what would have happened if we would have taken a risk? Because it seemed like that was a decision we should have made, but boy, it was scary and we weren't sure, and we were risking a lot to do it. And so I just want to encourage you to live a life with no regrets, to really ask yourself, what stops me from being more of a risk taker? Don't be crazy, but I'll just tell you, life, there's no growth in the comfort zone, and there's not a lot of comfort if you're willing to commit to being in the growth zone. You know, you're going to put yourself out there. You're going to volunteer to take on a project that you're not sure how it's going to go. You know, you say, you know what, I see this issue, and rather than telling my boss it needs to get fixed, hey, I want to spend some time and see if I can help with this. So I want to encourage you to take a risk. I think that's part of offering our best, is not to allow fear to stop us from offering our best. Epaphroditus was a tireless worker. It was actually his work ethic that led to his sickness, Paul says. And so I think offering our best means to work hard, to offer what you do have. You know what? I've learned my blood sugar had actually gone high for about the last year, and I didn't realize it till I went to my doctor. But I was just tired out a lot, and come to find out that was one reason why. My blood sugar was up around 200, and so I didn't have the energy at times this last year. But I would like to think that I still offered what I did have. And so I think offering what we have includes being a tireless worker. And then I think number 4 is he was a servant leader. I really think having an attitude of how can I serve people, because I care about people, because I want to offer my best. So it's not about having the most glamorous job. Epaphroditus was willing to do servant tasks in order to help the team win, and a couple weeks ago, I was walking our property picking up garbage, and some people are like, well, man, you should have someone else that is doing that. I'm like, you know what? I just saw some garbage, and there's no job that's below me. And I could have asked someone, hey, would you please go pick that up? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to spend 10 minutes. It was actually a nice day out, so I got some fresh air, and I walked the church property, and I started picking up garbage. Got my shoes a little muddy, and had to fix that when I got home and polish them up a little bit. But I think there's no getting away. There is no leadership outside of servant leadership. Leadership isn't about having the biggest, brightest corner office. It may come with that leadership position, I have no idea, but I think at the end of the day, it's still about serving people. So the little quote that I will leave you with, and at the bottom are also some evaluation questions. I'm not going to go through those, but the quote I want to leave you, John, would you read this Andy Stanley quote that's in italics right here, please? Yes, please.
The job of a leader isn't to fill everyone's bucket, but to make sure and empty yours each day.
So I heard Andy Stanley, I don't know if he's a leadership speaker, author, pastor. Oh man, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago I heard that quote, and I don't even know that I fully got it right, but that's what sticks in my brain, is the job of a leader, the job of a mom and dad isn't to fill the bucket of every person in your family, but your job is to empty your bucket on them every day. Does that make sense? See the difference? You can't do everything for everyone, but you can do something for someone. And you can offer your best. You can empty what you do have. You have that one good idea, you can share it. You have one compliment that pops in your brain, you can give it. You have an extra minute of time, you can send a text to a family member that you haven't reached out to for a while and said, hey, I just want you to know you're important to me, or whatever. Hey, how's life going? We can empty our bucket every day. And I think when you and I, as humans, wherever you're at on the faith spectrum is obviously it's your call. But I think at the end of the day, when we put our head on our pillow, we can know, did I empty my bucket? Did I empty, God, whatever I did have, the energy, the love, the care, the concern, the talents that the things that I'm good at, did I offer what I did have as much as I was able to? Because there's all sorts of factors in life that are out of our control, right? And those can discourage us. Those can weigh us down. Maybe we thought we could be the best at some task, and all of a sudden we realize, you know what, there's just people that are better than I am at that. I'm not ever going to be the best IT person in Fargo-Moorhead, but I can offer what I do have. I can offer the best to my coworkers, to my family, to my company. So that is kind of what I felt like I needed to share with all of you today. As I said, it's not ready to write this into a book or a dissertation, but it's just some ideas that have been going through my brain. You know what, Brian, since I guess the last time I was here when we kind of threw out a topic, this is part of what, so I've been thinking about it for whatever, 3-4 months. So.